2019, Australia was ravaged by bushfires. From the tips of the Queensland border all the way down to Victoria, fires tore through local communities, bushlands, and of course rivers and creeks, just like where we are today. In looking to do something about it, OzFish teamed up with Landcare in a bid to work with recreational fishers and landowners to kickstart the rehabilitation process. Today, we're on the banks of the Nymbodia River, and we're going to see exactly what goes in to turning in a burnt and barren wasteland into a vibrant fishery, just like it once was. Now, we all know bushfires are extremely devastating for all those involved, the local communities and landowners, but sometimes people fail to draw the connection between those fish that are living in the waterways nearby and the bushfire that runs through the land or the riparian zone. Now, the eastern cod, the freshwater eastern cod, is one of those fish that we're here today to try and protect. So there's trees, overhanging trees and shrubs around me, and in the bushfire they got wiped out. They were barren and it was nothing but a flat landscape here with ash coming down into the water. Now, the eastern cod is so dependent on those areas. It sits under trees just like here behind me, perched up there waiting for insects to fall out. It'll sit under there in the middle of the day to seek a little bit of shade. Who doesn't love a little bit of shade? Well, the cod certainly does. And as that sun gets further in the sky, it's going to move under those branches that are protruding out into the water as a little bit of protection. That is its home. So we're here today to make sure that this cod that was already endangered has a better chance of survival. And that starts with planting trees that will hopefully do the exact job that this one behind me is doing. This is David. He lives in this part of the world and donated both his time and land to this restoration project. He saw firsthand the devastation of those fires and decided to team up with OzFish to do something about it.
The day was extremely hot and the fires came straight over these mountains here, and there was no time to do anything. It was so incredibly hot. The devastation, there was burnt right to the river's edge. There was not even an ant on the ground. It was a shocking time. These gullies were half the width of what they are now. Since that fire went through, the amount of erosion that's occurred and pushed all that out, it was devastating to any of the wildlife that was living on this river. This particular river is home to the endangered eastern freshwater cod. That cod was almost extinct in the 80s, and it's only due to the protection of that species that we've actually brought it back. Then all of a sudden we're in that predicament again, where that cod is under threat. We think with what we can do with OzFish, we can actually get that species back to a position where it's a dominant species throughout this entire Clarence system.
OzFish is working with a range of different partners across New South Wales, Victoria and southeast Queensland. Those areas really heavily affected by the 2019-2020 bushfires.
So our stream banks are so important for our fish of all those different species, the small bodied fish right up to the big ones. The overhang is really important in those trees to provide shade. Hot water for fish is absolutely detrimental. It provides food. You'll be surprised how much food comes from those overhanging trees. We know that up to 40% of what fish eat come from overhanging trees, and they're terrestrial bugs, so ones that live on land, not even food from in the water. So we're working to kick-start that rehabilitation and get the trees back, the native veg back, so that our fish have got that infrastructure that they have in their habitat. The fish that the recreational fishers are out protecting are not just those ones that they're targeting recreationally. So they're fish that we don't normally catch. They're those small-bodied fish, purple-spotted gudgeon, some of the eastern freshwater cod that we don't target in our rivers. They're the ones that we're protecting, as well as all of those recreational species that we love.
After a hard day's planting, me and Trey thought it was time to swap the shovels for a rod and reel and hit the river to see how those fish are faring. Well, it's a beautiful afternoon on the banks of the Nymbodia River in the Clarence catchment. I've got a rod, a few soft plastics. It looks like Trey's got the kayak ready to go. Cast a few lures around, mate, or what?
Yeah, sounds good, mate. Let's go.
Oh, 1 in, 2 in. Oh, we're out of here. There's a snag behind me that I reckon we hit straight up. With a few lures packed, we set out to target an Aussie bass with every chance of seeing one of those endangered eastern cod. After pulling up on a likely bank and putting in a few casts, we crossed paths with a trophy specimen.
Well, in terms of fishing success, in my books, it doesn't get much better than that. Today, I was out on the Nymbodia River with the team at OzFish doing a bit of planting in the wake of the bushfires. We're planting trees in the riparian zone to support these guys who got absolutely ravaged in 2019 by those fires. And then I set off in the afternoon to catch an Australian bass. And believe it or not, 2 or 3 casts later, and this beautiful 75 centimetre eastern endangered cod jumped on my lure. Now I'm so conscious to treat this fish with care. I've got my left hand supporting the weight of the fish. I've got my right hand with a fish handling glove in its mouth, and I'm not lifting this fish out of the water. This is as much as I'm going to bring it out of the water. I can see his gills moving there. It's all about treating this fish with care. They've already taken a beating enough, and now it's my pleasure to catch it, but it's also my pleasure to let it go and swim another day. My heart is absolutely racing.
For me, seeing a fish of this size and the habitat that it came from is just a testament to the work that the guys and girls over at OzFish are doing in the wake of those bushfires.
Off you go. It does not get any better than that. My goodness.